Well, hello. I thought while I'm building these two vessels, I would just tell you a little bit about how I do it. Now, later on, there'll be much more detailed video, probably from start to finish, but who knows? But for now, why don't I just show you what I'm up to today? So I already have two vessels I started them a few days ago. I build very slowly and I love it. Now, when I started them, I had a bit of a design. This is the design. You'll see up here it says something like 25 inches max. Well, it should have said 18 inches max, or even 17, because that is the size of the kiln that I normally have access to. However, they kept growing. So the problem with working intuitively, practicality doesn't always come into it. So here is one that echoes. Here's one I've started, and I've got another one in front of me. I'll show you in a minute. And as you can probably tell, it's already too big for my kiln. Oh well, what can I say? So here's a little snippet of how I build these. I've always been a coil builder, which means I extrude or hand roll sausages of clay, and I add them one on top of the other, either towards the inside, towards the outside, or directly on top to build the clay up. Now, if I want to go in, I add them more to the inside edge. If I want them the pot to flare out, as I did down here, add them to the outside of the vessel. If I want it to go up fairly straight, or at least follow the curve, I add them directly on top. Now you can see this comes off way too easily. So I will show you how I glue them and blend them in. Recently, I have also received this beautiful wheel, and what that does for me is allows me to join the coils a little easier together and be able to build bigger, faster, and without hurting my hands, because that was a big problem, is when you're coiling by hand without the use of a wheel, and even just using a banding wheel and soft clay, it can be very challenging on the hand with repetitive injury as you're blending them in. So this is a huge help. First, let me take out the plastic, because I also have plastic on the inside to help slow down the drying in there, because right now this needs to be dry enough to hold everything up. This needs to be soft enough, to add to. With my good old faithful sponge that is, well, almost nothing left of it, but I love it, is I'm going to turn the wheel on very slowly, and I'm just going to get that rim a little bit on the damp side. Not even pushing, just getting it a little damp. I can use some of the sludgy clay that's in this bucket. It acts as a nice glue, but I don't like using too much because it makes it much harder to blend the coils in. So I keep a little towel handy because I'm constantly wanting to dry my hands in this process. So it's where it's very different from throwing traditionally. I'm going to drop my big coil inside the pot, and I'm just going to stop the wheel for a minute. Now I need this vessel to start coming in because it's already too big for my kiln. That's a story for another day. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the coil, I'm balancing it in my right hand, holding it up and keeping it at the angle I want, and my left hand I'm cupping over it. And as I cup over it, I'm doing this little squeezing motion which pushes down and in. And that's because I'm mostly keeping on top of the rim and slightly to the inside. So this will gradually bring me in and start bringing that curve in instead of continuing to go out. Don't get me wrong, I would love to continue to go out, but I've already exceeded the size of the kilns that I normally have access to, so I'm having to rent a different kiln, and I found out this morning the maximum of that one is about 8 inches shorter than I wanted, but that's okay. Sometimes creativity is constrained by practicality. So when I reach back to the starting spot, I pinch that off, blend it in, and now I'm going to start making sure this is fixed better, because although it's on there because of the water and the glue, you've got this rim and then this gap on either side, and that's not helpful. I want it to blend in completely. So let's bring it a bit closer. So you can see here I've got the coil has been added to the original rim. The rim has been firmed up by leaving it over a little while. I also use a heat gun on it if I want to speed up that process. The bottom of the vessel is wrapped in a plastic wrap just to keep it from drying out too much, because in clay you want the moisture to be as consistent as possible throughout the thing you're creating. However, in this process, it's always going to be drier lower down where I've started than it is at the top where I'm still adding very soft clay. So now that's on there, I would like to get rid of the lines. So what I do is I use my thumb. You can see now where the repetitive injury comes in, can't you? And I start to roughly blend it. Okay. And I do that all the way around. The good thing about this wheel is it can hold a lot of weight, and I can be turning it manually, or I can turn the motor on and have it rotate slowly, clockwise or anti-clockwise. So it's interesting. I notice when I'm blending by hand, I have the vessel going clockwise. But when I'm blending them in by using a throwing technique, a more traditional throwing technique, which I'll show you in a minute, I have the wheel going anti-clockwise. So you can see it's rough, but it's better attached. I'm going to do the same with the inside. Now this side I'm pushing down as well. Small movements, can you see that? I'm just pushing it in gently. Now I don't want to push too much because I still need the rim to be thick enough to keep adding more and more coils. Now some of you out there are saying, well, why don't you just make bigger coils or make slabs? It depends on what I want to do. I love bigger coils. The thing is, I had a certain thickness in mind for the walls of this vessel, and using smaller coils kept me within that limitation of not making the pot too thick. As it is, the pot is already too tall and too wide. So currently this vessel is 14 inches across the top and 14 inches high, and I am only about not even 50% built of the final design that I have in mind. Okay, so I'm going to do that all the way around, and I'm going to share, or have to switch to the other hand. So I'm just blending that in. Now what I do, and this is thanks to the wheel, I get my sponge not wringing wet, but I get it damp. I turn the wheel on, not too fast because it's a big pot. Don't want it to fly away on me. Get a little moisture on the inside of that join, the top of the join, and the outside of that join. So you can see it's not dripping in water, but it's just getting it damp enough that my hands can glide around it. Now, I want to compress the top and make sure that the top of the rim is nice and strong and not just getting tall and skinny. I want to push the sides in so that they're not getting squished out while I'm pushing down on the top. I am squeezing my fingers together like this, and I'm using my finger to make sure the rim stays down. And normally on a potter's wheel you tend to pull the clay up. With this technique, I push the clay down because I've already added to the top, whereas in traditional pottery, you're pulling from a lump of clay at the bottom, whereas I'm pushing from a lump of clay at the top. So just gently, my thumbs are locked together or touching. I'm bracing my arms against my body, and my fingers are opposite each other, and I'm just pushing down gently. And I can feel where there's a big lump and not a lump, or a bit missing. So if there's a bit missing, I ease off the pressure. If there's a lump, I push a little harder. And as best as I can, I want it even. So I go down very slowly. Might not seem to change much for you, but if you could feel it, you'd feel the difference. So now it's pretty much blended in and the same thickness. Now I'm going to come back up, ever such gentle touch. I'm doing this, beep, 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 like this, like a little machine claw. So I'm going from where I already had finished a piece. I am coming up to the new clay, feeling any lumps and bumps, adjusting my pressure to those lumps and bumps. And I'm gently coming up. I don't really want to pour the clay up because I already know the size of my coil is about the thickness of the clay I want in the wall. All I'm doing is distributing the coil and blending it in so that I have the same thickness wall on the inside and the outside. Well, I guess you have to on the inside and the outside. How would I get it any different? And I love this really floppy silicone rib. It's and what I'm doing this time is I'm just using the pads of my fingertips to support the inside, and I'm not really pushing very hard. I've got this rib curved to the curve of the pot, touching thumb to thumb to give myself support, and I'm just bringing that rib slowly around the curve that I want the vessel to go in. And I can feel there's a big lump up there, so I'm just going to take the rib away and push a little harder. There it is. It's probably where I joined the two coils. And I'm using this to shape and basically make it prettier. And with this nice soft rib kidney, I can also push on the inside, and I can do that with the other hand. I really, really can. There. And you see with this, it's not really pulling off much clay or slip because it's not scraping, it's shaping. If I need to scrape, I'm going to use this lovely flexible rib, and same movement, but you'll hear the difference. And you'll see it's brought away a lot more clay. And so what that does is it dries the surface a little bit, takes away some of the wetter clay, and also if there's extra lumps and bumps, it blends them in. And oh, I get hooked on this part and start fiddling too much. Now the only snag with scraping is my clay is groggy, sandy if you like, and what that means is, if you can notice or you heard it, is there's little particles in the smooth clay. In this particular clay, it's a high fire sand. In others, it's a fired clay that's been ground down and put back in. It's a bit like having rebar or gravel inside cement, smooth cement. But what it can also do, oh look, perfect. There we are, go around a bit more. You can see this line that it's, can you see the line? Boop, 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 boop. The lines here. And what that's done is it's caught a bit of sand and it's dragged it around. Now, if I wanted that for design, probably wouldn't be as even, but that would be lovely. But I don't. Now I want to get that sand back down under the surface where it belongs and where it can do its job without scraping away more clay or making lines where we don't want them. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it doesn't come out this first time round. I think it has, but there's a little bit more here. It's a bit deeper because this technique means as I add another couple of coils, I've got to blend them in down to about here and then blend them back in and blend them. So I end up going over a good couple of inches every time. And especially because I'm fussy, so I like to make sure it's blended in and can't come off very easily or cause a crack and such. So it's not until it's down here where it's harder and then wrapped in saran that I'm not going to fiddle with anymore. So not until I decorate it anyway. So the only other thing I'd show you is if I want this to dry faster, because I want to add more and now it's getting a bit too floppy, a little on the floppy side to add any more. I could probably add 1 or 2 more, but after that I'd have to wait. And who wants to wait? My tea will go cold. By the way, don't have tea and coffee in the studio. Just 1 minute. Oh, that's a lovely cup of tea. All right, so to dry it faster so your tea doesn't get cold, you can use a hairdryer, you can use a heat gun, or you can use a bit of gas, just like these things, that little flamethrowers for making desserts. Nobody makes desserts in this house, but it works a treat for this. But you do have to keep the vessel moving, so it's going to get loud. Now I don't do that too much because, of course, the thing I have to watch is I don't want it to dry out so much that I can't add the next coil. So with clay, it's all about moisture. Having enough, not too much. And at different times you want more, at different times you want less. You might be able to see some steam coming off that. I don't want to do it too much because I still want to do some shaping and I want to make sure it's nice and smooth. And I don't want it so hot I can't touch it. I mean, silly. However, you'll notice I did not put the heat on the rim itself because I don't want that to be too dry. All I'm doing is just evaporating some of the water down here so that it has a bit more strength for me to add more and more coils. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what I'm up to with these vessels. I'll show you more later. In fact, I've got lots to show you because now I'm back in the clay studio. I'm not leaving here. So if you want to see or hear from me, it'll have to be like this. Okay, keep creating. It's time for me to get back to claying and get another hot cup of tea. Bye for now.